Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching Fanboy.
Fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
Dot, I assume Tom.
What easily could have been set as an 80s, let's not say rom-com, but raunchy comedy, really turned in, excuse me, let's take that from the top.
You're all good.
All right. What easily could have been an 80s raunchy comedy takes a dark turn into the world of risque entertainment or risque work. We got to keep the language clean to not get dinged by the algorithm, with a film called Lovebug, coming to the San Antonio Film Festival on Saturday, July 26th at 12:30. We are here with the writer and director of Lovebug, Blake Kaiser. Blake, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate having a place to talk about the film. Yeah, we're kind of like in the middle of our festival circuit, so it's just been really exciting. Excited to go to San Antonio. I've never been. I really wanted to go to a festival in Texas because it's a place I haven't spent a lot of time. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, this is my third time in San Antonio for the film festival. We're going to have a good time out there. We're going to make sure that everything rolls easy.
Sweet.
And, you know, the one thing about this film that most people will not get is that it's very much an ancient Christian warning. And I know that might not have been your idea in making the film, but let me explain. So in the 4th century, St. Basil the Great said, hell can't be made attractive, so the devil makes attractive the road that leads there. And every step of the way with the character of Grace and Douglas, she really leads him to hell by every little crumb of, you know, well, it's not that bad. You've done this. This isn't much worse. This isn't much different. And that's the way Douglas falls into the greater traps throughout the film.
Totally. Yeah. Gracie is a master manipulator in that sense. And Douglas is, yeah, as you see throughout the film, constantly being kind of led astray and down a very odd path. And I think that's something that obviously brings a lot of darkness to the film of where Douglas ends up. But also for me, some of the dark comedy comes from that too, because I think the things that Gracie is pitching to him and the way she's doing it is so like tone deaf and absurd at times, where to me, I find that, and you know, it's not laugh out loud funny in that way, but I think there is something kind of darkly funny and absurd about that.
Right. And the thing with all of that is there's so much emotional manipulation. Usually we see it the other way around, where it's the male manipulating the female into this industry. And yet here we have a complete gender swap, because it does happen in that way as well.
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting because when I started writing it, I wasn't even thinking about how it was kind of like a gender swap scenario, but going to festivals in the past several months, that's something that I've been hearing a lot. And it makes sense. And I think it's really interesting because, you know, anyone could manipulate anybody. You know, it's just two people in a relationship. Relationships can be breeding grounds for kind of a toxic environment. It's a very personal relationship to have with someone. And sadly, not everyone has your best interests in mind. And Gracie certainly does not. She has her interests in mind.
Yeah. What made you decide to set this in the late 80s? I mean, we see parallel themes now where this is customized videos mailed out to people versus, you know, the website that's been rather famous for, you know, these types of videos where you can just send an email or a quick DM. You know, what was the catalyst of putting it in the 80s and going VHS versus digital?
Yeah, I mean, besides it just being a more interesting backdrop than the modern day, I think the biggest thing for me of why I wanted to set it in the 80s has to actually do with the fact that that's when digital cameras really started to become accessible for people. You know, I grew up in a generation where we basically had cameras in our back pocket since birth. You know, we've been filming our friends, we've been filming ourselves. And I wanted to tell a story where that was kind of still exciting for these characters and new, because for us, we kind of take it for granted. So for Gracie, having these digital camcorders that started to come out in the late 80s, it allows her to have this new opportunity for her not just to chase, she wants money, and that's a big motivator for her, but also just status and the idea of feeling powerful. And now she has the ability to have a camera in her hand. It's like kind of Hollywood. Even though she's filming adult films, it's still something it's new for her. She's not used to be able to make a movie at home like this, and it kind of the power of a director, I guess. And then for Douglas, it allows him to be seen in a way where he didn't know was possible, because all he has to do on tape is listen to Gracie, do what she says, and he's not only going to please her, but he's going to please all the fans that they send these tapes out to. So he's getting kind of this mass validation that at the time was not accessible for people who weren't celebrities. So it's kind of, everyone watching his tapes and loving it and giving feedback is kind of akin to social media today. So, the way that Gracie and Douglas are operating and feeling applies a lot still to the modern world. I just thought it'd be a more interesting backdrop, and these cameras coming out would make it kind of a more exciting time for them, because it's not something that they were used to, and now we just kind of have everywhere.
Right. And there was still a bit of anonymity left in all of this.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
One thing that was interesting, and I like the way you start off, Lovebug, and we're not going to give too much away because we want people to see it on the 26th in San Antonio, is that Douglas is getting out of an abusive relationship with Amanda at this point. And we can see that she's already beat him down emotionally, that when he meets Gracie, it's such an upturn high for him that someone actually respects him, or at least perceives to respect him, that he's willing to go the distance to appease her.
Totally. And she is just a master salesperson. She's got the pitch down. And Douglas at the start is in a relationship, and then 5 minutes later, he's basically entering a new one. And I think that immediately shows you kind of guy he is. He's seeking validation on pretty extreme levels, because his self-worth is at an all-time low for most of the film. So he is just trying to jump from one person to the other as long as they're going to tell him that they love him or that they value him in some way. And, when we talked about what the title of the film meant, Lovebug, it's ambiguous. It can mean different things to different people. To me, it's almost, I think of it as this, if this love bug is real, it's almost like a parasite that Douglas has, or maybe he is, and he's latching on to people, trying to get all his self-worth and validation from others and not looking to himself. And it's definitely a problem he has to work through in the film.
Well, most people have been in strange relationships with emotional manipulation, and Douglas is no different, except that his is way far out there in comparison to most.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. Your cast in this film, you have a very small cast of roughly 5 people. Yep. Jamie Hahn plays Amanda, Douglas's initial girlfriend, and she makes a second appearance later on in the film. Logan Pepper is Douglas, and then Lena I'm going to butcher Lena's last name if you can help me.
Torluemke.
Thank you. Lena is absolutely fantastic as Grace. It's interesting to see how Amanda's personality shifts when she's reintroduced in comparison to her initial introduction. And rain is always used as the transitional point in film, and here we have a scene where it takes place in the rain. So for those familiar with that in classic cinema, know that the washing away is coming. How important was it to have the rain as the transition?
This is a really interesting point you bring up, because the rain on the day was a complete accident. It was completely an accident, and it worked. At first it started like oh crap, this sucks, how are we going, it's pouring down rain, we don't have an umbrella right now, how are we going to do this? And then once we kind of wrapped our heads around it and added a quick line about the rain and found an umbrella, I think we all realized okay, the rain actually really does fit this scene. Like you said, the washing away and the change of things and just the moody kind of nature of this scene. So it was a blessing in disguise, honestly. But the rain was not planned for. But if I could go back, I would not take the rain away. I think that it definitely fit with the scene, what it meant, and tonally as well. So it was a very a stressful at first, but then happy accident.
Right. You know, with the cast, since everyone has had a bad breakup at some point, are there any personal jabs that end up in there? You know, slightly skewed for film to protect the guilty, but
Yeah.
you know, any of those like personal stories, you know, or manipulative conversations embedded in the script?
In a way, yeah. I mean, I have in no way, shape, or form have had any relationship as bad as the one that Douglas and Gracie have in any way. But, I think it's kind of taken from, I think back to some relationships I had in high school, especially when I was a bit more naive. I mean, I'm 23. What do I know? But
Yeah, and you already made a
like,
feature film, so congratulations.
yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, there's definitely some relationships in high school. I feel like looking back and just kind of like, why was I in that? Why it definitely was not the right person to me. Definitely have been with people who I feel like have, you know, have had some mean streaks. But it's not even a jab at them. It's also like, I'm not perfect too. Like I'm sure, some of my exes could say the same about me or think the same about me. So I think it's just relationships are tough. They should never get as tough as it is in this film.
No.
But I think inspiration wise, I think I took it from, even mistakes I've made, mistakes that I've seen too, of maybe a partner I'm with, or at least a mistake that I felt was happening. So I think it's just kind of, yeah, taken from that personal experience of seeing people mess up, being in relationships I shouldn't have been in, and also, me messing up too.
Right. You know, and it's human nature in this regard, just not as far as it went for the other two.
Yeah.
You know, and we got to keep making that iteration. But it's interesting to see how Grace goes full manipulation and the crocodile tears and everything that's involved with it. And when Douglas finally wakes up, and this is not a spoiler because we assume he's going to, it's a little too late, to put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting how you bring that all full circle and his self-discovery in how it comes about. You know, also not the way we want the self-discovery to happen in real life.
Totally.
You know, when you got to put this together and the editing's done, color balance, everything, was there a moment where you sat there and were like, I wish I could have done this a little bit differently, or we didn't have enough time and I really wanted this scene in, but we couldn't film it either budget-wise, schedule-wise, or was there something that you really wanted in there that you shot that just didn't fit the narrative?
Yeah, so thankfully, I mean, when I wrote this script, which was I started writing it my sophomore year of college, and then we filmed it the last year that I was in college. I'm about a year out now from being in school. But when I was writing it, I knew, like, we're going to have very little money for this. I'm going to be making it with people, myself included, who have never done a feature ever. So there was a lot that I knew we couldn't do. So when I wrote the script, it was very like, how can I make this a small story that is realistic for us to film? So thankfully, everything we shot is in the film. We didn't have to cut everything because the script was so tight in that way, because it just was like, what is the bare bones story that we can tell that's still engaging, but keeping it simple. And then, there's nothing that I would say I'd want to redo, because I'm so proud of what we were able to do. But we also, at the same time, like, we shot this film in 10 days, which is not normal. And I think that we were able to do it really well in 10 days because our actors were insanely talented, because we would do takes where they would go through an entire 9-page scene and they would just never mess up. It was like watching them do a play. So that made it possible. I guess if I could go back, I'd always want to say, like, give us 20 days, because who knows, maybe something we could have done. And also, it was just so fun that it would have been nice if it lasted longer. But yeah, I think, everything in the film kind of turned out exactly how I saw it. And I feel very lucky in that sense that the crew and the cast that I worked with were just the best people. I mean, like, the most talented people, especially like at, my age, I got really, really lucky with the people I met in college and helped me make this film. So I'm just proud of it. No regrets.
Can you disclose the budget since it was only 10 days?
Yeah, the budget for the film was $300K, which
is a micro budget.
Is not, yeah, very micro budget. And it was, tough to raise that money, to get that money. I spent pretty much every penny I had at the time, and now I'm working to save up so I can hopefully do this again, or hopefully, Lovebug will help us get funding to do the next one again in a, hopefully round up the budget a bit easier. But yeah.
Well, what you pulled off with 300K is incredible, and to see a story so well thought out and well put together, is something that's not actually done with multi-million-dollar movies, or $100 million movies, and a lot of people would have said, oh, well, he already hooked up with her, so obviously the stuff she's pitching, he's already got his clarity, he'll just walk away. But when we find out why in his personality, it all begins to make sense as, why the clarity didn't come after their intimate encounter.
Yeah, totally. He is very much, it's not even about like intimacy to him. That's part of it, of course, in a relationship, but I think it's the emotional kind of pool, and he's looking for emotional value in a relationship, and he's putting too much value on it in terms of where it comes from. He's wanting it to be this one-sided thing. So, he would, even if he got into a relationship with someone who was a bit more normal than Gracie, honestly, he could probably end up being the one who would be deemed more toxic, because the way he latches onto people is also not fair, So yeah.
Yeah, we used to call that a stage 5 clinger.
Yeah, he is easily a stage 5 clinger, without a doubt.
But everybody's performance is so raw, so realistic, so legit, that when you guys all got together and put this, they embody the characters, and you could tell that they really felt what they were doing versus then going through the motions, which happens with a lot of indie films.
Totally. Yeah, we spent so much time trying to find our Douglas and Gracie. We searched for like 8 months until we found them. It was insane. We didn't get Logan Pepper, who plays Douglas, until a month before shooting, because we just could not find like someone who was the right fit. But they immediately understood the characters. They understood the tone, which I think is the most important thing. Like, I didn't have to explain kind of this weird tone we're going for, where everything I think feels kind of slightly off. They got it immediately. And also something that helps, and this was completely by accident, Logan and Lena, the Gracie and Douglas, they have been friends since they were kids.
Okay.
And they did like acting classes together. And I had no idea. I casted them, we had them do a chemistry read, and they're like, oh my God, it's you. So they've known each other their whole lives and have still been friends. So I think that helped their chemistry and to be comfortable with each other. So that was just a really, again, another happy accident that they've already had this kind of rapport with each other. And I think that really helped their performances and chemistry in the film.
Sometimes that's the best way for it to work out. Like, it's just meant to be.
Yeah, it really was. Like, it sucked how long it took to find Douglas, but I would not have it any other way. It really felt like it was meant to work out that way.
And then there's a point you just look at Lena and like, why didn't you pitch your buddy earlier?
Yeah, literally. We've all joked with her about that, because the whole like crew, the producers and I were very stressed about our Douglas. That was maybe the most stressful part of pre-production in a lot of ways.
Yeah, sometimes that's what it is. There was another film that's going to be at San Antonio where they also found their lead, within three weeks to a month before they started shooting, and it just ends up the way it's supposed to.
Totally, it just works out like that. And I was, trying to keep a calm and level head. I was definitely stressed about it, but I just kept telling myself, like, once we find him, it will be for the right reasons. Like, it will work out the way it's meant to be. So, yeah. Thankfully it did.
And Lucas Brahm, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name properly, plays a very evil version of Bill. And it's interesting to see the level of stalkerish fandom, which we've seen quite a bit of as of late, or at least it's being more exposed than it has been previously, that he's going after Douglas in this regard.
Yes, yeah, Bill. He was one of my favorite characters to write and just to film those scenes because they're so insane. But yeah, Bill is complete stalker and just also kind of is representing like the idea of power going to someone's head. And he has like very like he's an editor in chief at a newspaper. Like that is a cool job, but it's gone to his head so much. And I think he's literally been obsessed with Douglas because he has seen him as someone that he can easily put down and is weak. But he's someone who's taken like a pretty cool job and just inflated his ego to the max in kind of a absurd way.
Well, when you have that much power in manipulating what's going to be put out, or the control of what's going to be put out daily, especially in 1988, where there were only 3 newspapers in LA. There was the Register, there's the Times, there was the Pilot in Long Beach, and a couple of other smaller papers.
Yeah,
you are going to have that power go to your head.
Totally, he's a complete control freak. I mean, down to literally, controlling Douglas and his actions and anticipating how he's going to act and just kind of taking that as a given.
When you got to, like, you're going through the motions, not going through the motions, I'm sorry, you're going through the editing process, you're getting everything done, the score is ready, the songs have a very 80s feel to them. As it all comes together and then you have the final cut, like, there's the director's cut and then there's the one that's going to be released in film festivals, especially in San Antonio. What is the difference between your previous editor's cut versus what we're getting as the final film?
Yeah, so I edited the film, and that was so fun for me because I love editing. I mean, I direct to edit. I was walking around on set with every day. I have like this big paper packet that goes through each shot and scene and exactly everything we need for the edit, and then things later that we can just try for fun. But editing it, myself, obviously I got a bunch of notes from producers and my friends at the time. I would say the biggest difference between what was my initial final cut of it and the one in festivals is just, I mean, the cut that we have now that's going to the festivals and is like our final cut now is the cut that I'm happiest with. But we did have a cut that was before a test screening. So that was the previous final version. And the difference between the test screening cut and the final cut, I would say, is the test screening cut was like 8 minutes longer. There was no scenes that were cut, just a lot of individual lines. A lot of the scenes were a lot longer. And then thankfully the feedback we got was good because looking back at some of those scenes, even though I'm biased, I'm going to love them always. Some of them were a bit too long, like looking back at it, like the pacing is much better now. Yeah. So I would just say, the pacing has improved from that test screening to final cut. And it's just a matter of lines from scenes being cut, here and there.
Right. No, the pacing is great and there's not a wasted scene, and it's very much the frog in the pot not realizing that the water is boiling as it continuously gets more intense.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
So we're going to be in San Antonio this coming week. Your screening's on the 26th. What would you like audiences to get from the film? And what would you tell somebody that, not exactly in Douglas's situation, but in a similar one, on how to work around it?
Yeah, so for people, if you're thinking about seeing the film, I always say that if the log line being about adult films puts you off and you think that it's going to be some crazy raunchy thing, I say give it a chance because it's really, it's not a story about the adult film industry. It's a story about a relationship, a story about two people, and someone who is desperately trying to find their self-worth, even if it happens in a kind of absurd way, and it takes a lot for him to wake up. So if you want to see a film that's intentionally kind of odd and off a bit, but still has heart and has, human characters and human themes, then I think you should check it out because it's I can promise you it's not going to be what you're expecting or what you think it's going to be. If you read the log line and you watch the trailer and then you watch the movie, I promise you, at the very least, even if you don't like it, you will be surprised.
Right.
I will say that. And then if someone was in a similar situation as Douglas, you know, man, it's a tough one to be in. I think sometimes you need a lot of wake up calls. I think if you even have an inkling of feeling unhappy or feeling kind of controlled in a way or unsure of something, you know, talk to some friends, explain maybe a fight you've had or situation, and that outside perspective, your friends will definitely tell you like, whoa, that does not seem right. They will be able to see it with clarity. So when in doubt, go to your friends.
I dig it. Blake, where can we find you and Lovebug on social media if we want to continue the conversation?
Yeah, so Lovebug, you can find us at Lovebug the Film on Instagram. And then my handle on Instagram is Blake Kaiser and then 2 underscores. But yeah, follow Lovebug. We post a bunch of updates of what festivals we're going to be going to, stay updated with the film, and hopefully find out where we will be distributed. Fingers crossed.
Blake Kaiser, thank you so much. Lovebug, the dark side of relationships and manipulation. You know, you've nailed it on the head. You made sure that it's a tight 95 minutes from opening credit to final credits rolling. You told a fantastic story with $300,000. Congratulations on that. We will see you in San Antonio, 31st anniversary. Again, it is Saturday, July 26th at 12:30 local time. And it's going to be at the Malu and Carlos Oliveras Theater, Texas Public Radio screening, 321 West Commerce Street, San Antonio. So I'll see you in about a week and a half, and looking forward to it.